a mitzvah. Thanks for being here. We start. If you're new to our programs, please join us. Please subscribe. Rabbi Fischer of Young Israel of Orange County Learning Center. Here we go. Seven-front war. Hezbollah is trying to rebuild. There's a ceasefire, and they're trying to rebuild in Lebanon without Israel noticing. But Israel noticed and decided to bomb everything that Hezbollah has rebuilt since the ceasefire, which got Beirut angry because they're bombing the capital, Lebanon. That's how it goes. First time that Israel is not going to let them rebuild.
Israel struck North Lebanon's southern suburbs of Beirut multiple times. According to Israel, it held underground facilities used by Hezbollah for the production of drones. The attack took place on Thursday, 5th June, on the eve of the Eid ul-Adha holiday. The strikes were Israel's fourth on the outskirts of the city since a truce agreement mediated by the United States ended the most recent conflict between Israel and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah in November, and the first in over a month. Prior to the strikes, Israel warned on Lebanon that it would strike 8 buildings at 4 different locations. Since the truce, Israel has carried out almost daily strikes in southern and eastern Lebanon, which Lebanon claims violates the deal. The strikes, according to Israeli sources, are meant to keep Hezbollah from reorganizing following a conflict that destroyed a large portion of its top leadership and arsenal. Earlier on 5th June, IDF Arabic spokesperson Avicii Adre posted an urgent warning on social media, asking people in the Al-Adat, Haret Rek, and Burj al-Barjana neighborhoods to leave buildings marked in red on the attached maps and nearby structures right away and to stay at least 300 meters away for safety. Using a satellite image of Lebanon with highlighted areas they said represented Hezbollah sites, the Israeli military posted a second urgent warning on X. Residents were advised to immediately stay at least 500 meters away from nearby buildings in response to the warning. According to National Numbering Agency, the statement caused widespread fear and evacuations. Dozens of cars were seen driving out of southern city districts in social media footage taken of the incident. The attacks took place on 6 June as Muslims in Lebanon got ready to celebrate Eid ul-Adha, also called the Feast of Sacrifice. A commission headed by the United States and France to oversee the ceasefire provisions, which include disarming Hezbollah, might suspend collaboration with the Lebanese army, the army warned. According to Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam and President Joseph Aoun, the Israeli strikes on the eve of a significant religious event were a blatant violation of an international agreement, as well as the basic tenets of international and humanitarian laws and resolutions.
Like they would not attack on Yom Kippur or Simchat Torah.
Shortly after the attacks on 5th June, Israel Katz, the country's defense minister, wrote on X that the Lebanese government is directly responsible for preventing violations of the ceasefire and all terrorist activity against the state of Israel. Katz continued, "We will continue to enforce the ceasefire rules without any compromises."
כן, אז תראי, אנחנו פרסמנו אצלך לא מעט פעמים על כך שעזתים עזבו את הרצועה, אבל היום בעצם אנחנו מדברים על הבשורה. מנהלת ההגירה לראשונה תחת חסותה.
300 Arabs have fled Gaza. They have absolutely abandoned and left Gaza. It's the first formal evacuation of people saying, we're just leaving.
מרכזת כ-300 עזתים ומוציאה אותם החוצה למספר מוקדים. תחילה, אירופה, אנחנו מדברים על...
Amazing, the places that they're going. 80 going to Europe, 16 to Jordan, 188 to the Emirates, United Arab Emirates. The interesting thing is why any Arabs in the last 10 years have fled to the United States and Europe. Think about it. Why didn't they go to Arab countries? They speak Arabic. They are Muslim. These are their people. If Jews were fleeing North Africa, first place they were going was to Israel. When Jews were getting out of Europe, they were going to Israel. British were keeping them out. Why did so many Arabs end up going to Europe? The majority, overwhelming majority. None of them go to Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. Because if they go there, they end up slaves. Literally, mamish, they end up slaves. And they'd rather go to Europe, where they don't speak the language, don't share the religion. And the attitude is when they get enough of them there, Europe will be their religion anyway, and their language. And Europe will be Muslim. I don't know that it will happen in our time, and perhaps Mashiach will come, so it never will happen. But my suspicion is if HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if God delays the coming of Messiah for another 50, 100 years, I suspect Europe will be Arab and Muslim. I really do. I'm not just saying crazy stuff. And it then will be very interesting watching all the Christians in Europe begging Israel for asylum.
כ-80 עזתים, לאמירויות 188 ולירדן 16. הרוב עזבו אגב דרך נמל התעופה רמון בדרום, ואולי הבשורה החדשה לראשונה גם לא מדובר על עזתים בעלי אזרחות כפולה. הדבר הנוסף שאני יכול לחדש לך...
He says that Gazans now actually are taking out dual citizenship. They're citizens of Gaza and of, let's say, France. And we have video later in this program. France won an important international soccer game to win a soccer championship. And the response and celebrations in Paris were unprecedentedly different from the way the country always celebrated international sports wins. It's a different country now, and there are different people living there, and the culture is changing, you'll see.
עכשיו, גורם ביטחוני בכיר ששוחחתי איתו היום אומר, מאז ניסיון החיסול של מוחמד סינואר אמש, יש זינוק בפניות למנהלת ההגירה, הרבה מאוד עזתים רוצים לצאת החוצה, אבל...
After Israel successfully bombed and killed Mohammed Sinwar, the brother of Yahya Sinwar, who had become the new leader of Hamas, he was hiding underneath a hospital, in a tunnel under a hospital, that set off a large group of people getting out of Gaza. The sense that Israel's no longer playing the game of, well, if you hide under a hospital, so we'll give you a pass. That everything is open target and people are getting out.
יש פה קושי. אם רוצים שנגדיל את המספרים מ-300 לאלפים רבים מדי שבוע, ובאמת נוכל להגיע ליעד של למעלה ממיליון, אנחנו צריכים שנתניהו והאמריקנים ימצאו מדינה שלישית, שתסכים לקלוט מסות אדירות.
He says the challenge is, really, we could reach a point where not only 300 leave or thousands, we probably could get 1 million out of the 2 million willing to leave, ready to leave. And the challenge is to find a country that'll take so many.
ואז באמת המנהלת תוכל לעבוד כמו שצריך.
Israel has recovered the bodies of 2 Israeli-American hostages taken in the Hamas October 7th attack that ignited the war in the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the remains of Judy Weinstein and Gadi Haggai were recovered and returned to Israel in a special operation by the Army and the Shin Bet Internal Security Agency. Quote, together with all the citizens of Israel, my wife and I extend our heartfelt condolences to the dear families. Our hearts ache for the most terrible loss. May their memory be blessed. That is a statement from Benjamin Netanyahu. Kibbutz Nir Oz announced the deaths of Weinstein and Haggai, both of whom had Israeli and U.S. citizenship back in December of 2023, and their bodies were held hostage by Hamas until being recovered here in the Gaza Strip overnight. The military saying they were killed in the October 7th attack.
People talks about humanitarian. What kind of bastards hold dead bodies? And not even of military people, but two senior citizens who were living in a kibbutz. What kind of bastards hold them? And what kind of bastards, starting with Macron in France and Keir Starmer in England, and he's married to a Reformed Jew, and Mark Carney in Canada. They're always talking about humanitarian, or in general terms, they add a few words that they have to add, de rigueur, about the hostages. So Israel, they say, is unhumanitarian, war crimes, starving the people, famine, 14,000 children will die tomorrow, all this garbage. And then they throw in at the end, and the hostages should go free. And they don't give you that understanding that these are savages who hold people in their, 70s, this side, that side of this. They hold their dead bodies. Unbelievable. Well, it's important for us to understand, because as long as Jews do not fold this time the way Israel always has folded in the past, just as long as we know we're right, it would be nice also to convince others, and there are some who have figured it out. Javier Milei in Argentina, Viktor Orban in Hungary, certain minority leaders like Kemi Badenoch in England, and Marine Le Pen in France, who's turned into a lot better pro-Israel than the media make it sound, and Pierre Poilievre. There are people that know, and they're aware of it. And Geert Wilders in Holland. But this is important to remember.
And taken into Gaza by a brigade there, the small armed group that it said had also abducted and killed Shiri Bibas and her two small children.
Crazy. Are you talking about humanitarian? All right, continue.
The Army said it recovered the remains of Weinstein and Haggai overnight into Thursday from the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis. From Fox.
This is just 1 minute for those not living in Israel. The country is God's land, and the people living there are God's chosen people. And even though I'm presently in America because of certain health realities, it's great to be one of God's chosen people. Kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol amim, because he chose us from all nations. Nevertheless, Israel does have its cultural aspect of loudmouths and blowhards. And I just wanted to share with you this less than 1 minute of a typical Israeli night on Israeli news, a panel discussion. And I use the word discussion metaphorically.
די, אוקיי, אורן תודה, ושאול תודה, לא לגופו של אדם, לגופו של עניין. חברים תודה.
He's the moderator if you want to use the word moderate.
חמודים, תודה, בוא נירגע. בבקשה, בבקשה, שאול ואורן, נשימה, פיני, תודה רבה.
Take a breath. Thank you both. Really very good.
אורן, תודה. תודה רבה. פיני, בבקשה. שאול, תישאר איתנו, בבקשה.
אתה תלמד לכבד.
תישאר איתנו, בבקשה.
אתה תלמד לסתום את הפה שלך. כשאתה מדבר, אני שותק. שב בשקט כשאני מדבר. נגמר הסיפור.
This is a TV panel discussion. Think of a panel discussion on Fox. Think of the Five, or think of a CNN panel discussion. On the other hand, to Israel's pride, it's not a discussion between Elon Musk and Scott Bessent where they end up fighting on the floor.
שאול, מאוד נוח לי, אני פשוט חושב שאתה מדבר שטויות. זה הכל. לא, אני חייב
Cindy McCain of the World Food Program was on.
They're still starting up with this bogus stuff about the feeding of the Arabs in Gaza. Israel has fed far too many Arabs for too long in Gaza. the only country in the world fighting for her life against people still holding hostages and under pressure to keep feeding them. And as you know, Israel doesn't want to feed them in a way that Hamas keeps taking all the food for themselves and then selling them on the market at marked up prices and using the money to sustain the Hamas military effort or terror effort, paying their own people. So this one here in the front row, I think is CBS, and she's beating up on Tammy Bruce. Some of you remember her from Fox and from radio, and she's now the spokesperson for the Defense Department. Used to be John Kirby, remember him? And Matt Dorso Miller, remember him? So she's the new one.
On CBS yesterday with a very different narrative. And we are hearing from the ground today from our reporters and producers and camera crews that this incident was very serious, that it was not Hamas related. Cindy McCain said that Hamas is not breaking up the food deliveries, that people are starving and there are food riots.
The chief spokesperson for the United Nations food. So when I say the word United Nations or UNRWA, already you know we're talking about bad people. But the chief person is Cindy McCain, the wife of deceased Senator John McCain, who was very pro-Israel. And Cindy McCain is very anti-Israel. And it's interesting to wonder, had John McCain not died of glioblastoma, the disease that killed my wife, Ellen Zichrona Livracha also, if John McCain, pro-Israel senator from Arizona, had not died, would his wife, who had not been an active commentator on the Middle East, because at that time the food issue and the war was not going on, to what degree she would have impacted him and turned him, and whichever way he went, Lindsey Graham went. Lindsey Graham, right after John McCain died, became the #1 backer of Israel in the Senate. He and a few others, Ted Cruz, John Kennedy from Louisiana. How life goes, if he had not died and Cindy McCain emerged as such an anti-Semite. Interesting how life goes. Their daughter, Meghan McCain, very pro-Israel. She used to really fight for Israel on The View, which is another story.
Because people are desperate. And the criticism of the GHF has been that it is not independent or impartial, that it was started by the Netanyahu government with people who are supposedly independent, and that it is only operating in the South, deliberately designed with 4 distribution points in the South in order to have people in the North move south for the aid and therefore accelerate the movement of people. And that no one had even told them about this foundation or given them.
Well, Andrea, this is where again there's
now there's a new thing, the GHF, which is an American-sponsored alternative foundation to provide food. And there have been shootings, and we've talked about it last week, because Hamas is trying to sabotage that effort. We're just bringing in food that bypassing Hamas. I question whether they should be bringing in food altogether, but to the degree that we decide you should. By the way, before I go forward, there's once in a lifetime opportunity to bring this out to you. It is said that Chaim Solomon, who funded the American Revolution, when the United States was not the United States, but was fighting the British, he needed money. Washington needed money. Nobody had money. It was a foundling country. And there was this one Jew in Pennsylvania, Chaim Solomon, and he practically single-handedly funded the American Revolution. Without Chaim Solomon, this country also would be anti-Israel under Britain. And Keir Starmer would be our leader too, with that David Lammy. It is said that George Washington, as one way of thanking Chaim Solomon, agreed that the United States would shape the 13 stars of the colonies in the shape of a Jewish star. That it would be a subtle way of thanking Chaim Solomon. Take it or leave it, couldn't resist.
certainly, and this is something the world is watching, something we've all cared about getting resolved. It is not an uncomplicated situation. This is, however, the first delivery of major aid, if not the only aid we've been hearing for months. I wish that Cindy McCain had spoken up, that they had found a way to move food into Gaza, because that certainly hadn't been conveyed to us. But now, which if that's the case, that's great. What I do know is that the people on the ground now, as the number I told you, I think is rather significant, 462,000 meals, that's what we're focused on. And that this is, and I'm not going to address either gossip or complaints or people who knew or weren't included or would do it a different way or who's shooting at whom. That Hamas, it's not Hamas. The real story here, the story is that aid and food is moving into Gaza at a massive scale at this point, when you're looking at 8,000 food boxes. Was this going to be like going to the mall or through a drive-through? No, it wasn't. This is a complicated environment, and the story is the fact that it's working. I find it difficult that there are people who would go on television shows to complain about a process that is working and moving food into the area.
Jenny,
Will it improve over time? Would anything that we do improve over time? Yes, in all likelihood. And I think anyone would welcome someone like Mrs. McCain or anyone else who has a method within which to contribute to this effort, to be able to do so instead of going on television and complaining.
And that's
the real story is that this is succeeding, and I think we should all at least have the courage to embrace that.
But until now,
Israel has let in over 1.7 million tons of food into Gaza. That's almost 100,000 trucks. That's 40% more per day than before the war. Despite all this aid pouring in, we still see civilians looking for food. So what's going on? Where is all the free food? Well, here's the deal. Hamas steals that food. Hamas hoards it, and then Hamas sells that food and uses the money to fuel its terror machine while leaving Gaza's people suffering. Hamas doesn't just smuggle rockets and kidnap people from their beds. It smuggles lies into the global media, the United Nations, NGOs, and journalists all around the world. To deal with Hamas's food theft, Israel has now launched a new strategy. We designated an area for civilians and an area for terrorists. Israel will now deliver food only to the civilian areas and supply them with anything they need. The goal is to cut off the terrorists from supplies, force them out of their tunnels, and then defeat them. Now, can you imagine these Hamas leaders that care less about their own civilians than about killing the Jews next door? That's our reality. They prefer their own people to die just in order for Jews to die. Hamas's goal is really simple. They want to turn the world against Israel, get us to give up, and then attack us again. How do I know that? They say it.
لازم نقدمها وحنقدمها مرة ثانية وثالثة لا حتكون ثانية وثالثة ورابعة.
Now, anyone who truly cares about this region and about the people here should put all the pressure where it belongs, on Hamas. Israel is not going to surrender. We're going to keep up the pressure until every one of our hostages is freed, is back home, and Hamas is destroyed. That's exactly what you would do.
We begin tonight with the chilling new video of the horrific attack in Boulder, Colorado. ABC News obtaining the video, the suspect targeting a small group of peaceful demonstrators gathered to raise awareness about the hostages still being held by Hamas. A warning, this video is difficult. The suspect disguising himself as a gardener, carrying in flowers. He's there on the right in an orange vest. He ignites homemade Molotov cocktails and then throws them at demonstrators. A trail of fire reaching the group, engulfing several people in flames and appearing to set himself on fire while throwing his homemade weapons. The man removing his burning shirt, still holding Molotov cocktails ready to be ignited. He brought 18 of them to the scene, according to authorities. The suspect, of course, arrested, and tonight there's news his family is now in the custody of ICE officials.
Some of you may not know, many of you do know, what is a Molotov cocktail? It's a term for the following. You take a bottle and you put flammable kerosene, flammable substance, like the kerosene that's used in outdoor lamps at restaurants, or maybe in your backyard, and you fill it halfway up. And then you take a rag and you put the rag in the upper half, and it soaks in that kerosene. And then right before you throw it, you set fire to the rag so that you've got a fiery rag that is sustained in its fire, flame by the kerosene that it has soaked, with the rest ready. It's in a glass bottle, and then you throw the bottle. Well, it became known as a Molotov cocktail because Molotov, I think the secretary of the defense minister in Stalin Russia, I think he came up with the idea, but you throw it at a tank, at a German tank. So this is not even meant only for throwing at people. You would throw it at a tank. And when the bottle hits the tank, the glass explodes. All the kerosene adds to the already existing fire and can actually disable a tank. Imagine throwing it at a person. That's a Molotov cocktail.
Still holding Molotov cocktails ready to be ignited. He brought 18 of them to the scene, according to authorities. The suspect, of course, arrested, and tonight there's news his family is now in the custody of ICE officials. Investigators searching the suspect's Colorado Springs home. Federal authorities say his wife and 5 children are being processed now for expedited deportation. ABC's Trevor Ault leading us off tonight from Boulder, Colorado.
Tonight, horrific new video showing the moment a man in Boulder, Colorado unleashed a fiery attack on a peaceful Jewish demonstration. The suspect seen in an orange vest walking toward the crowd, throwing a lit Molotov cocktail, setting fire to innocent people who'd been calling attention to the hostages still being held in Gaza. Witnesses saying the suspect yelled "Free Palestine" and appeared to light himself on fire. That suspect, 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Soliman, allegedly telling investigators he disguised himself as a gardener, even buying flowers to get as close as possible to the group. Later seen shirtless, yelling at the crowd before being taken into custody at the scene. At least 12 people injured, including an 88-year-old woman who survived the Holocaust. Tonight we've learned she's now out of the hospital recovering.
Thank you.
Showing no remorse, moments after allegedly setting people on fire and shouting "Free Palestine," Mohammed Sabri Soliman is facing the music.
But I need to first address you directly and make sure that you have received and that you understand the protection order that the court just issued.
Mr. Solomon stated that he had been planning this attack for a year, and he acted because he hated what he called the Zionist group. But what the charges allege that he did was to throw Molotov cocktails at a group of men and women, some of them in their late 80s, burning them as they peacefully walked on a Sunday to draw attention to Israeli hostages held in Gaza.
The 45-year-old has been slapped with over a dozen federal hate crime and attempted murder charges that could land him in prison for the rest of his life.
And now this just in, there is a report that we did want to let you know about right here. According to a Fox News reporter, the wife and all 5 children of Boulder terror suspect Mohammed Soliman have been arrested by ICE and HSI and are now in federal custody. That is according to multiple.
And right away, USA Today did a story telling us how special one of the daughters is. She came to America, wants to be a doctor, and now they're going to throw her out. And what did she do wrong? Her father did wrong. She did nothing. It's the old dreamer, tearjerker, under which every single child of every father or mother who's a crook, you should not put fathers and mothers in prison because you're denying the children their parentage. And all the children, and nobody should ever be thrown into prison. Fathers should never be thrown into prison for years because now the child won't have a father. And all these illegals should be left in the country. They've all overstayed their visas. And that's how the media works. Right away, you don't get a special story on each of several hostages who are being held or have been held, or the Bibas boys. Right away, it's about this poor Egyptian girl who's part of a family that's overstayed its welcome in this country, and what she could have been. Yeah, what she could have been probably would have ended up at a Columbia or a Harvard, leading demonstrations against Israel.
Senior DHS sources who have shared that information with Fox News. Mohammed Sabri Solomon, 45 years old, is that suspect. He faces hate crime charges in federal court and attempted murder and other charges in the state.
The family of the Egyptian national charged with tossing gasoline bombs at a pro-Israeli rally in Colorado was taken into federal custody on Tuesday, officials said. Federal officials have said Mohammed Sabri Solomon was in the U.S. illegally, having overstayed a tourist visa and an expired work permit. A White House post on social media said that now they could be quickly deported. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem posted this video to social media on Tuesday.
Today, the Department of Homeland Security and ICE are taking the family of suspected Boulder, Colorado terrorist and illegal alien Mohammed Solomon into ICE custody. Now, Mohammed's despicable actions will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But we're also investigating to what extent his family knew about this horrific attack, if they had any knowledge of it, or if they provided support to it.
According to local media reports, Solomon's family included 2 teenagers and 3 younger children. FBI and police officials had said on Monday that the family has cooperated with investigators. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for more details about the detention of.
And today marks the Jewish holiday Shavuot, and services at synagogues were very solemn after yesterday's attack. Denver 7's Ryan Fish spoke with local Jewish community leaders about how everybody can help.
At Temple Emmanuel in Southeast Denver Monday.
Our holiday of Shavuot, about the receiving of the Torah, and it's a holiday that Jews study all night, and then we pray and give thanks in the morning.
Senior Rabbi Joseph Black led those prayers, even with his congregation shaking.
President Donald Trump taking a series of actions at the White House this evening that include a travel ban and an investigation into former President Joe Biden. President Trump calling on his Attorney General Pam Bondi to conduct an investigation into whether President Biden's administration sought to conspire to cover up his mental state while in office. It's a significant escalation for the White House. It directs.
I don't bring in secular news and Trump news and Biden news. I'm bringing this story in because we are affected directly as Jews when Trump decides to ban entry into the country from 12 countries, many of which send in people like that Egyptian, who, even though Egypt's not on the list, but who send in people like that, who then go on to make all the trouble that we see on the campuses, universities, and other places.
The Justice Department to formally investigate the 82-year-old former president's use of the auto pen signature system to sign pardons right before leaving office. President Trump also signed a proclamation earlier this afternoon banning travel from 12 countries, citing national security concerns. The United States will impose full restrictions on entry from Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. The U.S. also imposing partial restrictions on.
Do we need people in this country coming in from Yemen, Saudi Arabia? They are the ones, they provided 15 of the 19 who participated in September 11. We need them. And you can be sure that the Jewish organizations are the first ones that protest. And then they get shot at by the people they help protest to bring in. And then they're hiring, and then they're crying. They're crying, why did this happen? We don't feel safe anymore. Well, you'd feel a lot safer if you didn't bring in all these Yemenites and Saudis and all these others. Think about it. Foolish, foolish Jews. It would sound anti-Semitic if you didn't know who I am. Foolish, foolish Jews. 4 years ago when Trump tried to do it, it was the same foolish, foolish Jews at the forefront fighting him in the courts. And in the end, these people go to the colleges where they beat up your kids on colleges. Foolish, foolish Jews.
Entry from Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. And in a further escalation against Harvard University, President Trump has moved to block entry for nearly all foreign students intending to study at the Ivy League school. Alex Perche, ABC News, Washington.
session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est... The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte.
Trump has imposed personally directed sanctions against all of these characters who put Israel on trial. They now can no longer come to the United States. Any assets they have in American banks are frozen. And they've actually, some of them have issued statements that we cannot do our work as a court of justice in an environment where this kind of stuff is going on. And that's the idea. The United States is not a member of the ICC, just as Israel. The United States was toying whether to join. And then during the Iraq War of Fallujah and those other things, they announced they were investigating whether America had perpetrated war crimes. And America decided, we're not joining the ICC. You're not going to have any jurisdiction over us. And Trump's statement was, you're not going to have jurisdiction over us, and we're not going to let you go after, these were Trump's words, our ally Israel.
22 new settlements.
Well, with Arabs throwing rockets or Molotov cocktails at Jews, and the ICC, and France and England, it's always nice to know that the current government of Israel, unlike some of its previous left-wing governments, they're just not going to be stopped. They are slowed down, and they are so frustrating that they don't do more rapidly. But they're a good government in many ways. Let's add the prepositional phrase, in many ways. And they have just approved 22 new communities in Judea and Samaria. And that's going to bring thousands of, right now there are 529,000 Jews in all parts of Judea and Samaria, not counting East Jerusalem, which is another 340,000. So altogether, you've got 869. You have about 869,000 Jews living in the parts of territory that Israel won in 1967, almost a million. And with these 22 new Jewish settlements in Judea, Samaria, it'll get close to a million. And it's a shame that I-24, I stands for Israel, that the Shlemiels still use that word, the term West Bank. Even the state of Arkansas has legislated that the term no longer is used. They refer to it as Judea, Samaria.
Settlements are going to be popping up in the West Bank after the Israeli government approved this major expansion. It's all part of this broader plan from both the defense minister, Israel Katz, and finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich. In fact, the defense ministry, they released a statement. It reads, quote, "The new settlements are all placed within a long-term strategic vision whose goal is to strengthen the Israeli hold on the territory to avoid the establishment of a Palestinian state."
You got that. It is a matter of national policy, not merely to attack Gaza and Hezbollah, not merely to build in Judea Samaria, but it is targeted as a national policy that has broad 80% support throughout the country, even among those who hate the government and demonstrate against it, to avoid the establishment of an Arab state anywhere in Judea and Samaria,
and to create the basis for future development of settlement in the coming decades. Now, there are a few interesting parts about this statement, the first one being strengthening the Israeli hold in the territory. In fact, this plan includes not only renewed settlement activity in the northern West Bank, but also some developments along the Jordan border for communities specifically on the border with Jordan. It also boosts Israel's presence.
What's great when they do maps is it looks like they're going to have communities filling up every inch or centimeter of Judea Samaria. Obviously, they're just little spots in the, if you've been to Yehuda Shomron, but it looks nice.
Along Route 443, this is a highway that connects Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. So this is part of the different goal of reinforcing Israeli control along these borders in the West Bank. Something else, though, that's interesting is as far as these 22 communities, it includes Homesh and Sanor. These are two former settlements that were actually evacuated in 2005 during Israel's disengagement from Gaza. There was this law that was passed. It forbade Israelis from entering that specific part of the northern West Bank. And even now, these are in areas near Jenin, Kabatia, areas that the IDF is conducting near daily raids to crack down on terror activity in the northern West Bank. But last year, this law that forbids Israelis from entering that specific part, that law was repealed, which essentially paves the way for these new settlements.
This is Ismail speaking from conscience. We have.
Okay, there's a. This is, I guess, the comedy section. Greta Thunberg, the world's savior, who prevented the world from firing into one great fireball and coming to an end, and who had the entire continent of Europe and almost the entire world and the United Nations groveling at her feet and cheering her and giving her a platform to address the United Nations as some little snot-nosed kid, explaining how the world works. So she's now grown up to focus all her intention on destroying Israel. And we now know who she is. That's what happens when you race to make heroes out of people who don't really have a resume, and they sound like the greatest thing since, well, they used to say sliced bread. And it turns out like the Candace Owens types who you hear about and they're just like better than great and where'd this person come from and yay, and then you start to find out we jumped in too soon and she ain't what she seemed to be. So anyway, Greta is the centerpiece on this little raggedy flotilla boat. It's not even a flotilla. It's one so-called humanitarian aid boat that's on its way with food for Gaza coming out of Europe. And it previously was bombed by a drone, and nobody knows which drone and who did it. And so she went on the media and she started droning about on and on about how the Zionists are trying to stop her. And really, when you look at earlier in the program about what the GAF and Israel are bringing in for food, GHF and Israel, and all the others, the idea of what little amount of food they're bringing on their boat anyway. So she's complaining that they got hit by drones.
Have been attacked by the Israeli drones, and as you can see, there's huge damage here. There was two-time attack.
בשעות הבוקר אפשר היה לראות את הנזק לסיפונה של ספינת הסיור הפלסטינית, נזק מן...
So that's the damage that took place on the SS Greta Thunberg.
נטרל אבל לא מטביע, פגיעה מדויקת בגנרטורים של הספינה והשבתתם.
The point they're making is they did not sink the boat. They had no interest in sinking the boat. Rather, they did precise striking that basically would force them to take the thing back home.
תקיפת כטב"ם שאירעה בלילה בין חמישי לשישי. זה קרה לאחר חצות כשכלי טייס בלתי מאויש פגע פעמיים בסיפונה של הספינה קונשנס, מצפון שמה, והוציא אותה...
The name of the thing is, name of the SS Greta Thunberg is called the Conscience.
מכלל פעולה. שריפה התחוללה באזור החרטום, הספינה התחילה לשדר אותות מצוקה וגם סרטונים.
Guys, this is an emergency. We need everyone to contact the Malta government right now.
זו הספינה בצילום ארכיון, פעם קראו לה מג'סטיק, והיא שימשה את ארגון ה-IHH הטורקי בפעילותו למען עזה. השבוע הפליגה מחופי טוניס, ועליה 16 אורחים ואנשי צוות, התכוונה להגון במלטה, להצטייד באספקה הומניטרית, ומשם להישיר אל חופי עזה.
They stopped off in Malta in order to get all this stuff, and then on the way to break through the siege. That's the quotation marks, break through the siege.
כדי לפרוץ את המצור כהגדרת פעיליה, רק שגורם כלשהו שיבש להם את התוכניות. אז מי אחראי לפעולה הכירורגית הזו 2,000 קילומטר מחופי עזה? לאנשי חמאס שיים...
So the question is, who is responsible for the bombing? Israel does not take credit. Nobody knows who did it.
תינו לה לשווא מאוד ברור.
نحمل في حركة حماس العدو الصهيوني المس...
This guy is a Hamas speaker, Abd al-Rahman Shadid, and he's saying we of Hamas charge Israel, the Zionists, Hatzioni, Hayev Hatzioni, the Zionist enemy, with the responsibility for this bombing.
مسؤولية الكاملة عن جريمة استهداف سفينة الضمير في المياه الدولية ونعدها قرصنة صهيونية وإرهاب دولة.
Anyway, that's his opinion.
But I want to get your thoughts on this. Game of Thrones actor Liam Cunningham is joining activist Greta Thunberg in this stunt to break the siege in Gaza. They're among 12 activists sailing to Gaza. Look at this.
Okay. Again, you got that. There's 12 people bringing their aid, and that's going to make a difference. This guy was in the HBO series Game of Thrones, they're telling us. So he's also there lending his star power. If you know him, Liam something or other.
Hi, I'm Liam. Yasmin, Tiago. If you look in the background, there's a beautiful boat. These beautiful people are going to be going to break the siege in Gaza. These are our coordinators, and if I may use it, they won't use the word our heroes.
What do you make of this? Another Hollywood celebrity appearing to kind of sympathise with Hamas terrorists. How will this turn out for them?
It is really Greta Thunberg should stick to climate change. Because, well, I mean, not that I'm encouraging that, mind you, but this is so, this is just, she always has to be in the public eye. Thank you.
Okay. So there's that.
Wall bears the names of those who protected or saved Jewish people.
And now anti-Semitism in France.
In France during the Nazi occupation. On Saturday, it was found covered in green paint. The Shoah Memorial first opened in 2005 to commemorate the Holocaust. Its vandalism has shocked some community members.
I'm emotional. My wife is distraught. It's a place I know well. I was here on the day they laid the first stone in about 1955. I was a kid. I couldn't have imagined that one day someone would smear it with paint or ink.
But number one, that's France. The very fact that there's a memorial is for all the French Jews. I recommend, if you've never seen it, but you have to have a box of tissues alongside you, see the movie Sarah's Key. Sarah's, S-A-R-A apostrophe S or H apostrophe S, Sarah's Key, K-E-Y. See that movie. Extraordinary movie. There will be some others that say, no, you should see Sorrow and the Pity. But that's 4 hours, and give yourself a break. You can be Yotze and fulfill the same purpose by seeing Sarah's Key. The vicious anti-Semitism in France. Denise and I just saw another movie that was being streamed, anti-Semitism in France during the Fischer government. We were just watching another one being streamed on HiFlix, the online service that carries Israeli films and stuff, and they had and they have them with captions. This was a French movie about anti-Semitism during French, very moving for me, and Denise. We were very moved by the movie. It's a terrible country, and it's been taken over by Arabs more and more, and that's why their government, like Macron, more and more are anti-Israel. It's a matter of political survival. In the United States, blacks make up, 12 to 15% of America. Hispanics a lot more, and pretty soon Asians a lot more also. Let's just talk about blacks. In all fairness, both parties have to recognize that black people are 12 to 15% of the population. In the case of the Democrats, it actually defines policies. And Republicans have to recognize that unless you really are copacetic with writing off 15% of the vote, you have to show some concern. And in any event, you have to show concern for Hispanics and for other minorities. Well, Arabs now are those kinds of numbers. And in a democracy where you have two basic blocks, the left and right, they're kind of balanced. It's like that in all the democracies. There's no such thing really in a democracy where one side has 90% and the other side has 10%. That's in dictatorships. Normally, any country that's called the People's Republic of, like the People's Republic of Korea, the People's Republic of China, the People's Republic of California, in those places, you get one side gets 90%, the other side gets 10%. But in a true democracy, they're pretty much close to each other. One side gets about 47 to 50%, the other side does. And then you suddenly throw in a population that's neither of those, and they're 15% of the total. If you can win that population, you're going to win all the elections. And for years, Democrats have assumed they're never going to lose an election again by bringing in all the Hispanics they could, millions of Hispanics, and then legalize them. And then you'll never lose another election. What they never counted on was that Trump was going to start bringing Hispanics over to the Republican side. If they keep going that way, you'll find in a few years that the Democrats are more build-the-wall anti-immigration than the Republicans. In the same way, Arabs more and more define the national political agendas of both parties because they need their vote. And it's going on everywhere in Europe, England, and just go all around. And the Catholic countries that have just turned on Israel one after another, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, just horrible.
3 other synagogues in central Paris were also targeted nearby, as was this restaurant where a woman who lives upstairs first discovered the paint.
Right, we're not anti-Jewish, we're just anti-Zionist, but we're not anti-Jewish, so we attack a kosher restaurant.
It's shocking as it's not what you'd expect, mostly because it's a restaurant.
France's Interior Minister quickly took to social media to say he was deeply disgusted by these heinous acts targeting the Jewish community, which is one of the biggest in the world and has been subjected to a rise in anti-Semitic attacks since October 7th. In May last year, around 20 red hand symbols were spray painted on the Holocaust Memorial, after which investigators considered whether it was an act of Russian interference. So far, no arrests or claims of responsibility have been made for Saturday's incidents. The city's mayor said authorities would be pressing charges.
If you ever drive through the Arab communities in Gaza, I'm in Judea and Samaria, if you ever in Judea and Samaria and you happen to drive through, and don't do it unless you're with an armed tour guide who tells you, yeah, this is safe. But basically you don't. But if you happen to go through them, you find that green is the color of choice among Arabs. For some cultural reason, I don't know. We lived 40 years ago, we tried Aliyah, and we lived in Karnei Shomron, Neve Eliza. And in order to get to work every day, we had to drive through 2 Arab villages. Azun, which is where Arafat's mother lived, so that was Azun, and Kalkilia, which is kind of what it sounds like, Kalkilia. And all the houses there, if you want to call them houses, all the shanties are green. It's the green color. Now, this is not a Jewish event, so I'm not going to play all 11 minutes, but this is what's happened in Paris. They won an important soccer championship, and this is what has happened, the degree to which the Arab Muslims have. This is not the France of Gigi and Maurice Chevalier.
I want to talk to you about the scenes out of Paris this weekend, where 2 people were killed, hundreds of people were injured during what was supposed to be a nationwide celebration in Paris following PSG's victory in the Champions League final. This is what unfolded. Now, that is not the type of chaos that you would ever typically see during a football celebration. Now,
welcome to the new Paris. There he is sitting and criticizing Israel and lecturing Israel. It's only getting worse. It's only getting worse. You know, so many Sundays we end up spending time what they're doing to Germany, and it's only getting worse.
Zionists go to our Jewish land.
לבני הזוג מוזס מישראל לחופשה בנפולי הסתיימה השבוע בטונים צורמים.
Okay, so here we go. Napoli, Italy. Zionists are being thrown out, namely Jews, being thrown out of a restaurant in Italy.
Zionists go to our Jewish land.
לבני הזוג מוזס מישראל לחופשה
The Moses, M-O-Z-E-S family were on vacation in Napoli, and it was the end of a week of just going around Italy and having a good time.
נפולי הסתיימה השבוע בטונים צורמים.
And then they're yelling back, Jew haters, anti-Semites. You hate Jews. Then she responds, yes, ani ma'od ge'eh bazeh. Well, that's the captions on the Israeli Channel 11 public broadcaster, but she's saying, I hate Jews and I'm very proud of it.
You're proud of what? You're a Jew hater. 2,000 years of persecution over here.
For 2,000 years, you have been doing this to us.
גילי מוזס ובן זוגה הגיעו לנפולי לחגוג את קבלת הדוקטורט שלה.
She had come to Napoli to celebrate receiving her doctorate degree.
בעל הדירה המליץ להם על מסעדה מקומית.
So a local said, why don't you go to La Taverna, very nice restaurant to celebrate.
טברנה סנטצ'יה רשמה. השניים הגיעו למקום לאכול והחלו לשוחח עם האורחים בשולחן הסמוך.
So they came to the restaurant and they were so happy and they were talking to the friends, not friends, but they were just making conversation with people at the next table. And in the course of saying, where are you from? We're from there, and we're from Israel. And as soon as the owner heard that these are from Israel, she got started. Starts screaming genocide, war crimes, apartheid.
Genocide, apartheid. אז אני אומרת, רגע, היית פעם בישראל?
So the lady says, wait, I said, hold on. Have you ever been to Israel? Have you ever seen Israel?
ראית, בכלל זה לא עניין אותה, התחילה לדבר על נתניהו.
The basic idea was she's never been to Israel. She doesn't know. Just started yelling about Netanyahu and genocide.
ועל ישראל ועל ג'נוסייד וכולי, ואז היא אמרה לנו, זייניסט, היא תפסה שם בכיסא, וכל הפרצוף שלה ככה כועס, ועיניים פקוחות, זייניסט and Israelis are not welcome in Napoli.
בשלב הזה גילי שלפה את הטלפון והחלה לתעד.
So at this point, they, take out the telephone, start video and everything. So that's a day in an Italian restaurant. And I would note, by the way, obviously it's not under hashgacha. One of the nice things of going to a kosher restaurant is you don't have to deal with this crap.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big deal here. Originally, the Trump administration tried to stop Harvard University from enrolling international students. According to this new order, new international students will not be allowed to enter the U.S. in order to attend Harvard. So it's essentially just another way to stop international students from attending Harvard. The Trump administration is just going about it a different way. Here's what we know so far. President Donald Trump's newest executive order against Harvard suspends new Harvard students from entering the United States as non-immigrants under F, M, or J visas. It also directs the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to consider revoking existing F, M, or J visas for current Harvard students. This comes after an extensive...
I am offering my own personal analysis here. So I cannot say with certainty that I'm right, but I usually am. And I'm not saying that out of arrogance, just after watching news for 40 and 50 years, start to get an idea what's going on. You may be wondering, why the focus on Harvard? Why specifically Harvard, we're going to cut out $2 billion, and we're going to cut out another $500 million, and we're going to bar foreign students, and we're going to delist you from being eligible to bring in foreigners, and we're going to do this to Harvard and that to Harvard, and we're going to go after the Harvard Law Review, and we're going to revoke visas. Why DAFCA? Why specifically Harvard? And also Columbia? This is my guess. I may be giving Trump too much credit and his team, but this is my guess. I litigated for 10 years very sophisticated, high-level litigate. Not that I'm sophisticated, but I was at law firms that were sophisticated, and I saw what they do, and they taught me. I suspect Trump is going to go after 20 colleges. He's going to go after just about all of the Ivy League and several others with Northwestern and UC Berkeley and UCLA and UC this and UC that. I suspect he's going to go over after 20 or so. The strategy, if I'm giving him too much credit, I hope he's listening and thinks about the strategy. You don't initially go after all 20 because every time you sue somebody, you bring in another team of lawyers suing you back. And the next thing you know, you're being sued by 20 teams of top-notch lawyers for each of the 20 schools. And each school is going to have 5 lawyers, let's say. So you've got 100 lawyers coming at you, 100 depositions. They're all calling for depositions, certainly for 20 colleges. And you're getting hit from 20 different directions. You want to be the one controlling the agenda. So what you do is the following. You know you're not going to get anywhere for about a year to a year and a half until all of the things you're trying to do, which all are going to be stopped by Obama judges and Biden judges who are going to create these national injunctions, everything's going to be on hold until it finally gets to the U.S. Supreme Court. And you're going to win some in the Supreme Court, you're going to lose some. But you're going to win a fair share because the Supreme Court, 5 or 6 of them actually, are reasonably fair people. The only ones that are truly just not fair are Ketanji and Sotomayor. Even Kagan is somewhat fair. Now, liberal, so she's predictably liberal, but she's fair. Only 2 are really not fair. So you're going to have people who are called right-wing, but every so often they come out with a left wing, not a left wing, but their reading of the law and the originalism and the text of the Constitution. They're persuaded that the other side is right, not the Trump side. And that's really okay. May not like it if you're for Trump, but really, isn't that really what you want? Don't you want judges who, in all honesty, look at the laws, the Constitution, the original intent, et cetera, and make their most honest, objective call without just being on a team, the way Ketanji and Sotomayor are. So you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. I believe Trump's game, again, I may be giving him too much credit. Just focus on 1 or 2, Harvard and Columbia, and let these things filter through the system for a year and a half, and the Supreme Court will finally rule which things you can get away with and which things you can't. And then with the Supreme Court ruling of the things he's allowed to do, then he comes and he hits all 20 with it. And then they can't fight it. They can have all the lawyers in the world, but once the Supreme Court has ruled, you can't come back the next day and say, well, now we'd like to go through the system and get an injunction. And no, the Supreme Court ruled, end of story. Which is why, in the same way, based on what he went through 4 years ago to get a Supreme Court ruling that allows a certain amount of immigration bans, as long as he couches it a certain way, now he can do it and he's going to be able to get it through more quickly because he's gone through this process. So in the same way, what I think he's doing is he's starting with Harvard, and he's going to see how far he can get. And then in a year and a half from now, whatever he could get away, whatever they said is legal, maybe cutting off money or barring foreign students or needing to specify specifically a little bit more clearly what the foreign student did and this and that, then I think we're going to see him do it to all 20. And he started with Harvard because Harvard was looking for a fight. The new president of Harvard is standing strongly, and he's entitled to. He's a strong personality. And he saw that Columbia bowed down, and he didn't like that. And so Trump decided, okay, I found my target. I got to find someone, and what better than Harvard? And so that's what's going on now. But I expect it's going to be all 20 once he gets through with one round. Then he doesn't have to fight 20 separate. Otherwise, he's got to fight 20 separate teams of lawyers and deal with 20 separate Obama judges. It's Meshuggah.
Extensive back and forth between Harvard University and the Trump administration.
This is singling out, again, Harvard as not a destination and not somewhere that's accepting foreign students.
As it stands, a federal judge already issued a temporary order last week preventing the Trump administration from blocking the school's ability to enroll international students.
It's an ever-moving target, and I think that's what provides the challenge for not only the students that are affected by it, but for people in the legal industry. How do we protect when the game changes every 2 weeks?
A spokesperson for Harvard saying this is yet another illegal retaliatory step taken by the administration in violation of Harvard's First Amendment rights. Harvard will continue to protect its international students.
I would be tempted to say that for most students, they're going to pick the safe route of transferring or going back to their home country and reapplying.
That is the key. And then I'm going to go on to the next one. Even if Trump loses in the courts, let's say I'm a kid from Somalia, okay? I'm from Somalia. I want to get to see my hero Ilhan Omar in person. Maybe even go to school with her daughter at Columbia. So I was planning, as a Somalian, I was planning to go study at Harvard or Columbia and get my degree. Now I see the president of the United States is at war with Harvard. And I'm in Somalia. I don't know everything going on with their court system and their deep state. All I know is if I go to Harvard, if I stick with my original plan for Harvard, it's going to be aggravation. And in the end, they may not let me come anyway, or they may throw me out after I get there. I think I'll just go somewhere else. So even if Harvard wins all the cases, what Trump is accomplishing is he is indirectly convincing the whole Harvard incoming class of foreign students to withdraw their applications and go somewhere else. They'll find people, but they'll be ranked number 3 or number 4. They won't get the tops. They'll get the ones in Somalia that married Ilhan Omar.
Austin.
So this is Dartmouth. Go ahead, put your picture on there and reserve your space. A year and a half from now, when the time comes, we'll have Dartmouth also. Little beetle.
You showed the world that MIT wants a...
We're finishing now the season of graduations, and there were 3 particular graduation speeches that got some nationwide publicity. One out of George Washington University, one out of, I think, NYU, and then this one. And what happens is the class president writes a speech, and it gets okayed, a few changes are made, and 3 of these kids ended up showing up and delivering a speech different from the speech that they submitted, and it was okayed. And really, that's not okay. All right.
The Free Palestine.
I emphasized last week at the Columbia graduation, when you hear all those voices cheering, or George Washington University, 30 people can cheer and 100 people can cheer and make a lot of noise. Sounds like everybody. But if there are 500 people or 1,000 people, you don't really hear the people not cheering because they're silent. They just don't speak up. These self-righteous virtue signalers, really, when you come right down to it, they don't speak for the majority of their student body. And I'm not just saying that. It's just you look at these things and you see that the majority are silent, but people don't have the courage or really a strategy on what to do. You're sitting at graduation. Someone's got the microphone. They'll be done in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and you don't know what to do. And then you go home and you say, here's what I should have done.
And you stood in solidarity with the pro-Palestine activists on campus. You faced threats, intimidation, and suppression coming from all directions, especially your own university officials. But you prevailed because the MIT community that I know would never tolerate a genocide. Right now, while we prepare prepare to graduate and move forward with our lives, there are no universities left in Gaza. We are watching Israel try to wipe Palestine off the face of the earth.
Release the hostages, and then you'll get whatever's still left you can have. Release the hostages.
And it's a shame that MIT is a part of it.
Almost exactly a year ago, in April 2024, Columbia University became a battleground. A huge mob of masked rioters broke into an academic building and rebranded the iconic Alexander Hamilton Hall by draping its walls with a giant flag calling for Intifada. It was now Hind Hall, named for Hind Rajub, a 5-year-old girl whose lifeless body was found in Gaza's rubble.
Could have named it Bebas Hall.
It all felt a bit Les Mis. Metal barricades were erected, strengthened with chairs and tables to block authorities from entering. A video showed one hammer-wielding demonstrator smashing through a glass-paneled door and locking it with a bike lock. We later learned that an unlucky janitor was taken hostage by a 40-year-old trust fund kid who wasn't even a Columbia student. This campus tension has continued, even escalated under the Trump administration.
Trump administration's effort to deport a Columbia University student protester moved to a New York City courtroom yesterday.
This is a movement, an anti-war movement.
How has the Palestinian cause become as central to students today as the Vietnam War was in the 1960s? Well, it didn't happen overnight. The roots of this revolution at Columbia and throughout the elite universities can be traced back to the publication in 1978 of a volume called Orientalism. Its author was Edward Said, one of the first activist scholars of his.
I want to take a second to say.
Okay, this one is about 4 or 5 short clips. I have to admit, I am over 70, and I'm not ashamed of it when I consider the alternatives. And I'm no longer, I mean, as 70 goes, I'm cool. I'm hip for 70, but what can I say? I hear of people like Kehlani. I've never heard of them. I guess these are very important people among the younger generation. I've never heard of her until I prepared class. She's apparently a very famous American pop star, and she hates Jews, and she's someone who apparently you don't look at, you read her. I guess that's what you do. You read her, and so you figure out what she is and who she is and what she stands for. And let's see why I'm doing this.
Free Palestine, beyond a ceasefire, we need an end to the occupation. Free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan, free Yemen, free Hawaii, free Guam. Beyond a ceasefire, we need an end.
Did you catch free Hawaii? Okay. This is who the Free Palestine crowd, no such thing as Palestine, but this is it. They've got a long list, and it even includes Hawaii.
To the occupation is deeper than this. I need everybody that's here right now, everybody that's watching, to step up, to use their voices. I'm not a public speaker. I kind of yell on Instagram sometimes. That's as far as I go, but any difference that you can make is appreciated. Wear your keffiyehs outside. Stop and shop at Palestinian businesses. Hire Palestinians, hire Congolese people, hire people from Sudan. Send your money where it matters. We all we got, so I'm gonna leave that
there. Okay, that's an introduction. So that's an idea of who the great Kehlani is, number 2.
A planned concert in...
I grew up in a time, now that I've already revealed for the 300th time my age, I grew up in a generation when Simon and Garfunkel were the Central Park concert. I still remember that concert. What a challenge I had. It was Shabbat, and I was a rabbi in Jersey City, New Jersey, and the question was, can I come up with am I going to use one of my vacation weeks in order to spend Shabbat in mid-Manhattan and get to that concert. And in the end, I did not, and I've watched it like 10 times on YouTube, so it all worked out. But that's who they used to have for concerts. Simon and Garfunkel. I was at the Garth Brooks concert, I believe. There you go. How far, how low we have come. That this Drek was invited to do a Simon and Garfunkel, Garth Brooks concert in Central Park. But Mayor Eric Adams canceled it.
In Central Park, headlined by R&B singer Kalani, has been canceled due to security concerns. She was scheduled to perform as part of Summer Stage in Central Park in June during Pride festivities. But in an Instagram post, Summer Stage said they were notified by the mayor's office that there were safety issues. This comes after Cornell University canceled a Kalani concert 2 weeks ago because of her, quote, anti-Semitic and anti-Israel views.
So some of the news is good.
Mayor's office did not cite that as the reason.
New York Summer Stage cancels Kalani concert amid concerns from Mayor Adams' office. New York City's Summer Stage canceled Kalani's scheduled performance in Central Park this June, citing safety issues raised by Mayor Eric Adams' office. The news arrives after Cornell University nixed her planned concert at their campus over the singer's public support of Palestinians amid Israel's ongoing war against Hamas. We write to advise you that we have security concerns about this event, given the controversy surrounding Kalani's scheduled performance at Cornell University, causing university officials to cancel the appearance, the security precautions needed for an event like this in Central Park, and the security demands throughout the city for other Pride events during the same period of time, First Deputy Mayor Randy Mastro wrote in a letter.
Oh, so on top of this, it was a Pride event. It was for LGBTQ. I guess she's a lesbian.
Obtained by Rolling Stone, which was addressed to the City Parks Foundation, organizers of Summer Stage, on Monday. The letter added that the mayor's office intended to refer the issue to the New York City Police Department, NYPD, and if it found serious safety concerns, the office would have to determine the status of the foundation's license.
So there you have that. So she's been canceled by Cornell. And she's been canceled by Eric Adams and Central Park. And that brings us to San Diego.
We have learned tonight that more than 30 Jewish organizations are dropping out of this year's Pride Parade. The Jewish Federation of San Diego says anti-Semitic rants by the event's headliner make them feel unsafe. NBC7's Dave Summers takes a closer look at.
I mean, this is a moment for great mourning throughout the American Jewish community that Nebuch 31 Jewish groups who were co-sponsoring the Pride event have had to pull out of sponsoring the Pride event. Such a tragedy, such a tragedy. Of course, the real tragedy is that they sponsor a Pride event in the first place.
Look at a decision that will affect one of San Diego's biggest events of the year.
The Pride Parade draws hundreds of thousands each year. While it is a celebration of LGBTQ+ culture, the intention is to include everyone.
They don't feel safe. It's a terrible loss. They want to be there.
Jewish Federation of San Diego president and CEO Heidi Gantberg says all 31 of the city's Jewish organizations are pulling their...
Hold on. Chabad event. There's no way Chabad was sponsoring a Pride thing. But they probably were part of a coalition, and the coalition was, who knows, Chabad of Downtown, who got her? Most of them, Hebrew Free Loan, Hillel, IAC. It's just so ridiculous. I want to be sure there's no Orthodox anything here. Okay, all right.
Support from this year's July Pride Parade.
These are groups who want to be at Pride.
No.
These organizations, many of them have marched in Pride for decades.
The Jewish...
Never. This is what it takes. Anyway, thank God for small things.
Pull their funding for
want to thank everybody for being with us today. Hope you had a wonderful experience over Shabbat, and I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday and Thursday, God willing, for classes. We'll be finishing the book of Ruth this week. So normally Tuesday we do the stories of Shmuel Bet and David HaMelech and what's going on with his son who's out of control now, Avshalom, and the rebellion. And Thursdays we've been talking about the use of the honeypot approach in wartime, but we're going to finish up, God willing, the book of Ruth this Tuesday and Thursday. So thanks again for being here. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.